Alright, Video Game Growing Pains here. We are talking about Final Fantasy IX. Final Fantasy IX is a bit of an odd title because it's a return to form, so to speak. It's very similar to the earlier Final Fantasy games of 4, 5, and 6. And although it does have a little bit of the modern sensibilities and some of the changes, it was very much similar to that, though the graphical style is drastically different, and they managed to do some interesting tweaks to the formula. So, Final Fantasy IX, what do we got? Well, basically we are following a tailed thief named Zidane, who is trying to steal away the Princess of Alexandria, Garnet. Thing is, Princess Garnet wants to be stolen away. In fact, she kind of steals herself away, and Zidane has to re-steal her. Along the way, her bodyguard, the inept but very loyal Steiner, follows her. The unusual mage Vivi, and several other characters join the fray as well. It turns out that Garnet's mother is kind of insane and wants to take over the world using summoned magic. This kind of leads into a plot where there is a very crazy, effeminate villain, and we start learning about what it is to be human, what it is to be alive, and well, things start to go a little off the rails. Basically, we have living dolls who are trying to discover their own value as existence. We have clones and aliens, monsters and beasts, and we have a very interesting set of plot twists and an exploration, really, of what it means to go through incredible trauma and psychological trouble. It's a very deep game that you would not guess from its art style. The art style is very much Yoshitaka Amano inspired. This is kind of what Amano's art style would look like in a 3D world. Tetsuya Nomura was still there a little bit, but like I said, this was a throwback. So a lot of the character design was very Yoshitaka Amano. We have some anime tropes here, you know, with the somewhat bigger heads and the unusual body proportions. But overall, I think that it works. The problem is that the coloration's a little unusual. Like, some characters' skin will be weird colors, and the designs can be very strange. For example, Queen Brand, Garnet's mother, like, her skin is blue, but she and Garnet are both supposed to be regular people, and I don't even know. It's weird. But, that being said, I really think that the game is quite compelling. The characters are probably the best part of it. Story-wise, they have everything from the small-scale characters who are very interesting to the large-scale characters who make a big impact, which everybody comes to know and care about. My favorite characters are probably actually some small villains called the Black Waltzes. They basically take the design of the Black Mage from the original Final Fantasy and say, how can we make this more evil and demonic? And it's kind of amazing what they do with it, especially with the graphics. But we'll get to the graphics in a little bit. The characters are very interesting and much less annoying, actually, than in Final Fantasy VIII. For example, Vivi is constantly questioning his existence. He is a tiny little black mage doll, and he doesn't know if or when he'll die. So he's trying to find the value of life. Freya, a dragoon, a rat woman dragoon, yeah, this game's kind of weird, that we meet later, often questions whether or not she must give up her own loyalty if she's going to actually advance in the world, or perhaps she won't be remembered at all. Perhaps all her work will come to nothing. Steiner grapples with loyalty to his queen, loyalty to his princess, and loyalty to his own ideals, as well as the people he cares about. Zidane, in truth, is actually a very likable character who's very bright, very upbeat, but at the same time, at one point in the game, he hits an incredible low, and it's just so strange seeing him so down, and his friends have to pull him out of it. Garnet actually probably goes through one of the most interesting character arcs in any Final Fantasy game, and with any Final Fantasy heroine. We actually get a chance to rename her later, which is a nickname that Zidane gives her. And this actually plays a lot into her character as she's going through a rebirth, changing from sort of the standard princess trope into something a bit more rugged and a bit more experienced. She has summoned beasts still within her body, which are very powerful, but which are also extracted from her for the use of her evil mother. And, well, at one point she goes through an incredible trauma and tragedy and loses her voice. This means all of her spells have a chance of failing, all of her summons have a chance of failing, and she doesn't talk throughout the entire time that her voice is gone. And it's kind of an amazingly apprehensive and tragic moment for the entire series. We do, of course, get some lighthearted characters, such as Quina, the chef. Quina's basic motto is, I do what I want. You have problem? He's a guy who likes to eat. But, you know, most of the other characters are very well defined, and even Quina will have moments of well thought out mental questions and psychological ponderings. And we get, of course, some other unique characters. The designs might make you think that they are very comical or comedic, such as Eiko, the tiny summoner. But, you know, for being so small, she carries a lot of punch in her. And Amarant, the badass mercenary who, you know, he's very uncaring about a lot of things, but at the same time, he has respect for his enemies and is willing to keep his promises. Very interesting stuff. Now, the graphics of this game, like I said, we're a mix between the old style of Yoshitaka Amano and a little bit of Tetsuya Nomura. What really set it out from the other games, though, was just how in-depth the cinematics were. We got to see some truly jaw-dropping visuals that actually really added to how the game felt, the gravitas of it all. The big ones are the summoned battle moments, because there are several times when summons affect the real world. In the other Final Fantasies, we've seen summons used in battle, but these cinematics show the summons being brought into the real world to fight, very much like what happened in Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. We see entire kingdoms laid to waste by them, and it's kind of horrifying, in a way, to see all of this go so wrong. And the character designs look so very lifelike. Yes, the designs are a little awkward because they're meant to be, you know, Yoshitaka Amano's dreamlike designs, but they move very fluidly, and there's not any polygonal clipping, really, like with Final Fantasy VII. Very interesting stuff. Gameplay-wise, we have a mix of the old and a mix of the new. We have the standard turn-based battles back, where you learn skills, you learn magic, everyone has their own roles. Very much like Final Fantasy IV. No drawing magic in Final Fantasy VIII, no equipping magic like in Final Fantasy VII. However, you can learn skills that are specific to your class by equipping certain items. So, Zidane's a thief, he can learn some more thief-based skills. Steiner's a knight, he can learn knight-based skills. And this gives a lot of identity to the characters, just like it did in previous Final Fantasies. But it also gives us a feeling of progression. We can see how much we're growing, and we can choose which skills to grow. The return of Triple Triad is also a welcome benefit. It's less important now than it was in 8, because yes, you can get items from the cards, but it's not that big a deal. But it is still very enjoyable, and it makes the game feel a lot more alive. You have a lot more side quests to do here, such as the Chocobo Forests, which were very popular in Final Fantasy VIII. And there's really a lot to say here. I would say probably the weakest part of the story and the graphics are the villains. Queen Brand is quite, well, grotesque, and though she does have a redemption plot where she realizes what she's done is very bad, nobody likes Queen Brand. And Kuja, the main villain, he's actually got some very interesting plot ideals where we talk about creationism and the idea of nature versus nurture, the idea of cloning and what makes a person, but he's dressed so weird. I mean, you could almost tell this was a Nomura design because he looks like he's from a fetish convention. I mean, that would be fine if everybody else didn't dress normally. I mean, he looks like he's wearing literally just a pair of boxers and like a chest harness that lets you see his pecs. It's so weird. But, you know, that aside, the gameplay and graphics are quite good. We have some very amazing moments, such as an entire castle turning into an angelic robot to fight off a dragon. That's pretty epic. Musically, the game is very good. Like I said, there's not much to say. Nobuo Uematsu, he does amazing work. The end theme Melodies of Life playing over the final sort of reveal, the final plot reveal, is just so amazingly beautiful. The game's actually much simpler than a lot of the other games in the series. You don't have to do a lot of junctioning or a lot of, you know, grinding. It's you equip items, you gain experience. With Quina, you can eat enemies to gain experience. And some characters are very skilled, some are not. For example, Garnet and Eiko can summon. Nobody else can. Vivi can use black magic. Not many people can. Freya jumps. No one else can. Steiner uses knight skills. No one else can. It's very much here is your role, make the best of it kind of game. And it's very similar to the older Final Fantasies in that way. The only real thing I would say for the old school fans that might turn them off is the art style, because Yoshitaka Amano's art style is very good in, 8 and 16-bit, but the 3D is a little weird. I think I've pretty much left that on. That some parts of this game are just weird. But I really think that the story is great, the characterization is fantastic. A lot of people forget about Final Fantasy IX, and that's a shame, because it stands up there with Final Fantasies 5, 6, and 4. It's got an incredibly in-depth story and characters, and there's a lot to really do in the game. It's not as intense with what you can do in Final Fantasy VI. It's not a completionist nightmare, but there's a lot of tricks that you can do. People have even spent time trying to beat a secret final boss at level 1, exploiting certain game glitches to try and do that. Others have tried to speedrun the game to get super weapons that you can only get if you beat the game in like 15 hours. There's a lot to really see in the game, but you don't have to. It's very well balanced in terms of difficulty for the most part, and it feels like an older Final Fantasy game. Probably the last time we'll get a game quite this good from Square. A little depressing to think about when you actually talk like it. The story is very good. It does go a little off the rails at the end. This is actually pretty common for later Final Fantasies, where it just goes crazy at the end. But the character moments are brilliant, and the character stories themselves are amazing. They even try to add to these by having private moments, where when you go into certain towns, you can actually go without the rest of your cast, so you can meet them, or meet other people to create subplots or move the story along, and it was very interesting. I quite liked it. Now, I think that Final Fantasy IX is probably the best game of this era, the era of the cinematics. It's very much like the older ones, but it's still changed enough that it's really enjoyable and engaging. We have a very powerful story, it's well told, very likable characters, very few annoying ones, and a lot of really in-depth and very complicated themes explored. The battle system is very fun, and the graphics, while a bit off-putting at certain points, are really there to emphasize just the gravitas of the story, and it works quite well. Now, Final Fantasy IX is where I would normally cut off the era of cinematics, but we've got two more podcasts coming out that I want to talk about. The first one being about Final Fantasy Tactics. Final Fantasy Tactics is a drastic departure from the series, but it needs to be mentioned because it's really, really cool. And then we got the Chocobo and other tangential Final Fantasy games. We'll get to those. First, though, we're going to be talking Final Fantasy Tactics. This is Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones was a thing. Stay tuned.